All right. Good afternoon to everyone who is joining us live, and also to any future viewers after this is recorded. Um, Welcome to our presentation today, which is titled Living and Working Well with a Disability, and I felt compelled to add very because it's a positive story and journey, thankfully, with some ups and downs, but hopefully the takeaway today will be that one of positivity and endurance and such. So today's presentation, and I will introduce myself in just a bit, but today's presentation for those community members who often visit the Living Well community YouTube resource. Today's presentation is going to be maybe a little deviation from the more instructional videos, and so I want to just start with a little humor and just say that I will not be teaching yoga or cardio dance. This is going to be helpful, hopefully, in a different way, in a way that celebrates disability awareness and celebrates an amazing milestone that just happened this past week, which marks it being 35 years since the signing of the ADA, which stands for the Americans with Disabilities Act, and just really a monumental part of our history that we'll talk about a little bit as well. And before I formally introduce myself, I also just want to take a moment and say that it's really a pleasure to partner with our Living Well community and appreciate the opportunity to have a little deviation today and another type of focus on fitness and wellness, but from the standpoint of within a disability and what that looks like. And so in talking about what what is the difference between someone with a disability and how they might focus on or value wellness and fitness physically, emotionally, and to not keep you guessing, it's really so similar to someone without a disability, right? So our values are often shared values, whether someone has an apparent or non-apparent disability. And I would even suggest that for a person like myself with a disability and others in my disability community, that it's almost more important because we have to all the more focus on our health and wellness and our mental and physical health, because we're also having to navigate the world and different settings with a disability. And so I am going to move on to introduce myself. My name is Rachel Siegel, and I am wearing a few different hats today. I am the Abilities Plus membership lead, and Abilities Plus is a CRG, which stands for Colleague Resource Group, and I am an employee of Point 32 Health. And Abilities Plus is a group within our organization for colleagues to where we focus on accessibility and awareness, education about disability. We run different events. We work with partners in the community, different agencies and such, and just it's just so important that we feel it's so important that the disability community be known and present. And I will just say that as you hear a little bit about my journey, the fact that I, a couple of years ago, reached out to our team that oversees the CRGs and self-nominated myself as membership lead is pretty monumental. For me, it was really an illustration to me of where I was in my own process of just accepting myself, my disability, and as they say, just sort of being out loud and proud about it after, you know, a journey of something very different for a long time. I am also a behavioral health care manager. I'm a licensed social worker. I work with our members at my job in helping with navigating healthcare, ensuring access and care coordination and such. And I have been with the combined organization for over 16 years. And I want to just mention that Point 32 Health was just given a perfect score, so to speak, of 100 for places to work, best places to work if you do have a disability, and for inclusion. And so definitely makes me so proud to be associated with our company, and all the more reason why organizations or groups like Abilities Plus are so important. And then most sort of relevant to today's presentation, my disability is that I have a bilateral congenital hearing loss from birth. That means that I was born this way and I wear hearing aids in both ears. I would say that my hearing loss is, and from the tests I've had, it's moderate to severe. And so just important to think about as I talk about my journey coming up. I wanted to just share a quote. I always, I remember watching The Miracle Worker as a kid and also as an adult, and I don't know anyone who wouldn't be amazed by Helen Keller, who had more than just deafness, but also being blind and didn't speak for a long time. And I just thought that this quote really encompasses the importance of us remembering, for all of us, whether it's a disability or just a challenge that you have kind of consistently, that the locus of change and, it is within us. It's just, we hold so much power in terms of how we see ourselves and learn to see ourselves in a positive way. And so the quote is from Helen Keller: "Your success and happiness lies in you. Resolve to keep happy, and your joy and you shall form an invincible host against difficulties." Such a universal quote, certainly, but very relevant for disabilities and what our experience can be like. So this is just a picture of the signing of the ADA. And again, we're just again, a few days ago marks the 35th anniversary of the signing of the ADA. And for anyone who doesn't know, just to review that it really was such a landmark federal civil rights law that was implemented and with the goals of really prohibiting discrimination against people with disabilities and promoting access to employment, public services that might be needed, and just really a focus on access and accommodations that were needed. And so just to talk a little bit generally about the disability community, I just wanted to give you a few sort of facts and figures that I think are really notable, that 1 in 4 adults in the US has a disability. That makes over 1 billion people worldwide, just to give you a sense of the vastness and how common a disability is, and that really important that 75% of disabilities are non-apparent, which means not visible. And so, it's so hard to know what someone might be managing or navigating because it's not always visible. And what I thought was interesting is this next percentage, that the median for employee self-identification as having a disability is very low at 3.5%. So I think, and I'll talk a bit more about this, really speaks to the stigma and some of the misunderstanding about coming out as and disclosing a disability. And just to review that a disability can be vision related, hearing related, like in my case, mobility, learning issue, and a mental health condition. We talk a lot in Abilities Plus about neurodiversity. I think there's been so much more of an awareness of autism spectrum conditions and how relevant they are, and I think underdiagnosed in certain populations and now really being acknowledged, and so many are getting great care from that, being progressive in terms of more awareness in healthcare and in schools, other realms. And then we have other non-apparent disabilities, so sort of miscellaneous category, as we can't possibly encapsulate all of them right here. And so important, how are you and I connected to the disability community? Obviously, someone with a disability like myself, I am connected personally, but there are other ways to be connected. As I'm sure some of you would agree, we may have a loved one with a disability, whether our children, immediate family, friends, colleagues, in any realm like that, that connects you to the disability community. And then you can be an ally, just increasing your own knowledge. Also, I definitely invite everyone to take part in disability organizations and community activities to show that allyship. And then we have, in my view, thankfully, those who create the content so that we, as people with whatever type of disability, that we have access, accommodations, and for me, thinking about the invention of closed caption and also Bluetooth capability, and moving to this next slide that I'll probably stay on a little bit, even though it looks very technical, the technology advances in hearing aids, which are very much relevant to my story. I just also want to mention, please, if you have thoughts, comments, please, put them in the chat, and we'll have a chance soon to talk about, anything that you would like, what the conversation brings up for you. So I will make a very long story as short as possible, while also hopefully putting in some interesting and poignant details. The reason that I chose to add this slide of the history of hearing aids is that the technology was always talked about in my family. And so to back up just a second, so as I mentioned, I was born with the hearing loss that I have. It was not noticed until I was about 4, and it was noticed by my mother when I was taking dance classes that I seemed to be just behind everyone else, maybe couldn't hear the music or what have you. And I think in sort of reflecting over the years, I think I flew under the radar because I have a twin brother who was so just kind of crazy and gregarious, and I think he took up so much of the attention, and I was quiet and like compliant. And so I think if someone was talking to me right up in my face, like my mother or father, I probably didn't have that much of a problem hearing. So, but once she realized, she had me tested, and I ended up with my first pair of hearing aids at 5 years old. And so speaking of this hearing aid slide, so very important piece to my story is that my father has the same hearing loss. So this was genetic. And what is so notable to me as his daughter is that he never, ever agreed to wear hearing aids. I think maybe he had one test and he was just convinced that the technology wasn't effective, it wasn't necessary. And what is so interesting to me is that when he was growing up, and he's 84 right now, when he was growing up, when he was in 3rd grade, just to give you a sense of, I think, what we didn't know back then and what we've come to know now, that he and another student had a hearing impairment. And so rather than teach them a language like Spanish, French, they were they were brought into a class to learn lip reading. And so literally a lip reading class. And to this day, my father will tell you he's like the king of the lip readers. And so but that's ultimately just another, form of like denial, really, because yes, we do learn to lip read pretty well, but it's not effective in the long run by any means. And we're still missing so much of the content and such. And so, so I uh, got my hearing aids, and I just want to mention that what's interesting is that I have such a vivid memory of walking out of that, um, facility. I think it was Willie Ross, which was really big um, in Western Mass, and at the time, and I remember um, hearing, even though I was very young, again, I was 5, I remember distinctly hearing birds, hearing birds chirp for the first time. And if you can imagine that, right, it's something that many people take for granted. And I also remember when we got into the car, what song was on the radio, because I probably could hear it clearly for the first time. Um, and so I bring this up because obviously there's so much positive, right, that immediately showed itself. And yet um, I found myself really um, puzzled and confused about hearing aids because, again, my father just outright kept this opinion that hearing aids just made everything noisy. Um, there were molds that were big um, and it distorted your voice a little bit. And so I really ended up taking on a lot of what he believed and um, and not realizing that this was about him. This was some sort of um, stigma he felt. It was shame and and certainly denial that he could pass because we both really did not do well. Somehow we did get through um, life and school and have relationships, but um, it wasn't to our full potential. And so and the the other piece that was really challenging for me was, again, just sort of this negative connotation um, about having a hearing loss, that it was just like almost like a plague, that it wasn't something to really talk about. You just sort of do the best that you can. And you lip read, all of these things. And so I really don't recall consistently wearing my hearing aids from like 7 years old on. And occasionally might get a new pair and try to wear them. And I just think that I really internalized those messages from my dad, who, by the way, has a lot of wonderful qualities. And I saw him as the protector and provider of our family. He has a PhD, and I just thought, wow, like if he has a PhD, and he's saying we don't need hearing aids, maybe we don't. Meanwhile, I will say we were probably the first home to have a closed caption machine in 1980. And I remember it coming home, and it was so big. Sears created, I think, the first closed caption machine. And I remember, that seeing the words up on the screen and being able to actually hear, so to speak, the TV. So he obviously acknowledged, the hard of hearing piece, but to a point where, like I said, I have, certainly in some ways, I don't like to use the word regrets, but I wish that I had, I think, uh, maybe just been taken aside a little bit and encouraged to wear my hearing aids. And I honestly don't remember. I'm sure my mother did, but again, there were other facets of our life and challenges that I think because I did fine in school, had friends, all of that, it just wasn't really pursued. And I think my mother was so used to my father refusing too that she just maybe didn't know how to push the issue. But I also didn't have any teachers or anything like that, interestingly, that also said, like, Rachel, you know, why aren't you sitting in the front of the class, or um, anything like that, which is interesting. And again, when you are trying to pass, I'm trying to fly under the radar. So my plan essentially was working. So I know time is ticking. So I want to just I will fill you all in, more up to date update. But I just want to talk about that, in terms of my journey. What really stands out to me is this intergenerational stigma and my dad's process that I, just ended up taking on, and kind of that was my role model in a way. We have since, talked a lot about this, and I'm happy to say that I have been wearing hearing aids every single day, all day since 2013. But as you can imagine, I, when I was 5, it was 1978, and I am not wearing hearing aids every day consistently until 2013. And I am so um, thrilled. It changed my life. It changed my relationships, how I was able to be fit, in my disability, to just have more confidence, to focus on my own life and wellness and fitness. And again, really helped in the workplace for sure. It's so hard to hear um, in a room full of a lot of people without having that technology. Now I'm proud to, my colleagues know I immediately go to the front table. Like I have to be in the front so I can hear and lip read, I guess. So just I want to say that a lot of my friends, teammates were instrumental, as was my now husband, who has vision issues. And he said very plainly right after we got married, so was not married wearing hearing aids, that, listen, I have a vision issue, which he does. You have a hearing issue. You've got to have hearing aids. And so the rest is history. And, I'm just so blessed to have these amazing hearing aids, the access that's available now. If anyone needs any guidance with that, please let us know. Bluetooth hearing aids. My phone actually rang. Sorry, I meant to shut it off, but my phone rang and it rings in my ear, so I was able to shut it off. And caption, of course, like we have today here. So I will end because I know it's 1:30. I don't know if we have any time for questions. I really apologize, but I hope that the takeaway, is really that disability is not meant to be something that we're ashamed about. It just is, and but it's so livable within, with all types of support, and that the way to be successful is to accept and utilize your supports and the technology and the resources available. Thank you so much.